I call to order the Lake Mills Plan Commission meeting of May 24, 2022, and we will proceed with roll call, please.
Mr. Holman?
Here.
Ms. Lazares?
Here.
Mr. Mason?
Here.
Mr. Foster?
Mr. Foster emailed me that there's a death in the family and he had to travel. So I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier.
Okay. Mr. Coots? Mr. Coots? Mr. Grady?
Here.
Mrs. Bishop?
Here.
All right, thank you. Item number 3, correction and/or approval of the meeting minutes of April 26, 2022.
Steve Holman, I move to adopt.
Brian Grady, second.
Mr. Holman moved and Mr. Grady seconded to approve the minutes of April 26. Are there any further comments, discussion? All right, hearing none, then we'll proceed with the roll call vote.
Ms. Lazares?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Abstain.
Mr. Grady?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
All right. Item number 4, questions and public comment. The public may address the commission at this time regarding items on the agenda unless the item is the subject of a public hearing. If your comments pertain to a public hearing, please hold your comments until the hearing. We do have 6 public hearings this evening. Item number 5, rezoning request by James W Schmidt to rezone property at 923 East Lake Street from RD Rural Development to R14 Single Family Residential. Item number 7, rezoning request by Ryan Malone to rezone property at the northwest corner of County Road A and Tyrannina Park Road from RD Rural Development to PB Planned Business. Item number 9, conditional use request by Jamie Almquist to add animal boarding to existing facility at 200 Enterprise Drive. Item number 11, future land use amendment by the city to change future land use for a part of a parcel abutting on the south of 1219 South Main Street from planned neighborhood to general industrial. Item number 13, rezoning request by John Tramburg to rezone the Lake Mills Fiend Green parcel at 1219 South Main Street and part of a parcel abutting to the south owned by Topels Lakeside Park from planned industrial and multifamily residential to planned industrial with development district overlay. Item number 15, conditional use request by John Tramburg for general processing and outdoor storage at 1219 South Main Street, Lake Mills Fiend Green, and part of a parcel abutting to the south owned by Topels Lakeside Park. Public comment may also be made at this time on items not on the agenda if you have registered with the city clerk before the meeting. The state's open meeting law discourages action by the commission on items not listed on the agenda. Please keep comments limited to 3 minutes. State your name and address when starting comments. Also fill in the sign-in sheet on the podium. If anyone is online, please type your name and address in the chat feature. Are there any public comments at this time? And anyone commenting online? All right, hearing none under item 4, then we'll go on to item number 5, public hearing request for zoning amendment from James W Schmidt for changing zoning from rural development to single-family residential for property at 923 East Lake Street, Lake Mills, parcel 246-0714-1822007. Before we commence with any public comments on this request, I'd like to ask our consulting planners to present an overview of this request.
Thank you, Ms. Lazaris. This property is, as mentioned, located on County B. It is an existing residence that was on a private septic system. That septic system has failed. They're requesting to connect to municipal utilities. As a part of that process, the city does not provide utility service outside of its borders. They need to annex. And then, of course, we need to assign a permanent zoning to that property. The area is single-family residential. The adjacent properties are zoned R1-4, which is a 10,000 square foot property. The recommendation from staff is to do the same for this, so a permanent zoning of R1-4. It is in keeping with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, the future land use map. Staff didn't have any conditions, but there are some findings that we are showing as a part of the recommendation. And I believe there's a memo that outlines that as well. A resolution that outlines that as well.
All right, very well.
I'm sorry, that's a good clarification. It has been annexed.
Yes. All right. All right, very well. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Are there any comments concerning the requested rezoning of this parcel coming into the city? It hasn't been annexed now by the city. Any public comments concerning this rezoning request at 923 East Lake Street? Are there any public comments for this request? All right, hearing none. The public hearing is closed. We go on to item number 6, discussion recommendation on zoning amendment by James W Schmidt for changing zoning from rural development RD to single-family residential R14 for property at 923 East Lake Street, Lake Mills, parcel 246-0714-1822007. Plan commissioners, this is one of the properties on East Lake Street that there are just a handful of properties now on East Lake Street that some towns, some city, and so forth, and this is one of them, and now annexed. We do have a motion before us, Plan Commission Motion 2251, recommendation to City Council for zoning amendment, parcel 246-0714-1822007 by owner petitioner James W Schmidt. This motion does set forth the city's zoning authority under Wisconsin state statutes and refers to Chapter 660 of the Municipal Code containing zoning regulations. The city's annexation of the subject site at 923 East Lake Street, the zoning amendment request to rezone the subject site from RD rural development to R14 single-family residential. The review and recommendations by city staff, tonight's public hearing and Plan Commission review. This motion does provide for a Plan Commission recommendation to the City Council to approve the rezoning subject to procedural provisions contained in Chapter 660, the zoning regulations. Does anyone have any questions of staff or any comments concerning the request?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
I would entertain a motion.
Steve Holman, like to make a motion to adopt the motion that was prepared.
Ms. Bishop seconds.
It's been moved by Mr. Holman and seconded by Mrs. Bishop to pass motion 2251 on this rezoning request. Are there any further comments
Yeah, I have some. I'm just pleased to see that, the zoning area RD, this is my first example of seeing RD come in, as a annexation. And, I communicated with Steve a long time ago about, how that process works with, bringing, outside properties into annexation through RD, and this is a good example of how when it comes in, or when it's RD, that it can be, annexed and then be part of the city. So I'm pleased to see our zoning code working properly.
Right. Are there any further comments? All right, in that case, we'll proceed with roll call vote.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Grady,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Ms. Cazares.
Me? Aye. All right, thank you. Item number 7, public hearing, request on zoning amendment by Ryan Malone to change zoning from rural development, RD, to planned business, PB, for the property currently addressed as W7411 County Highway V, Lake Mills, parcel 018-0713-1214-002. The property is located at the northwest corner of County Road A and Tyranina Road. So as you continue along Mulberry Street and at County A, and you see that interchange with Tyranina at the northwest corner, then is what's being referred to here. Before we accept public comment, and we would ask our consulting planners to present the request.
Thank you. As you indicated, this is the vacant lot that is to the east of the RV site at the corner of V and A. People have driven past it countless times. This property has not been annexed, but they have petitioned for annexation to the city, and it is in process being reviewed by the city and the Department of Administration for technical requirements, et cetera. The reason that this petitioner is asking for a recommendation at this time is not an uncommon one for commercial entities. They want to rezone the property to planned business. They are looking to obviously finalize or close on the property, and they want to make sure that they can get their zoning in order as soon as is practical. And they obviously are working on their financing end, and I'm sure from a banking perspective, they want to make sure that the zoning is going to be recommended from this body. That being said, an action by the council wouldn't occur until after the annexation is finalized, and I guess those I's are dotted, T's and crossed with parcel numbers and such. This area is in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. It has been planned for planned business for many years. It is illustrated as such in the comprehensive plan. There is additional commercial around this site. Obviously, it abuts I-43. I won't say it has great visibility on I-43 because of the bridge. If you're 94, sorry. 94 as you're heading westbound because of the bridge, but if you are going eastbound, it has much better visibility. And as you know, when you come down the hill on A, it's a pretty steep hill coming in into that intersection. But this area and the other 3 corners of that intersection have all been anticipated to be planned business if and or when they come into the city. So it is in keeping with the comprehensive plan and what it is extraterritorially zoned. The details associated with the future use is anticipated to be a lodging and/or a lodging establishment. Once zoning is in place, it will obviously need to go through the process by which plans, site plans, architecture, et cetera, is reviewed. So a separate item, but again, they are looking to streamline their approval process by going through the public hearing now, a recommendation being made, and then as soon as the council can act on it, in essence, putting the permanent zoning in place. That could save them upwards of 30 to 40 days, which certainly can be important for a commercial project. We are recommending approval, and the attorney did put together a prepared motion as well.
All right, very well. The public hearing is open. Are there any public comments regarding this rezoning request? If you wish to speak, then would you approach the podium, write down your name and address, and also announce your name and address for the record.
Melanie Kolaski, 275 Tamarack Drive, Apartment 7. With this permit for the camper joint, will it impact traffic flow and stuff at that intersection of A and B? Due to the fact that there's numerous accidents really early in the morning, and when our children are now exiting the new elementary school that we built, and concerns with that. And with the county concerns that they denied the vision of putting the turnaround at that time when they rebuilt the bridge, that impacted it more. What is their plan for the use of the property? Entering and exiting is my concern.
Well, I can say at this time, a final site plan hasn't been submitted for review. They do want to make sure that they will have zoning in place for planned business, which it has been planned for. Any access would need to be approved by the county, of course, because it is their jurisdiction. Certainly a concern that the city has is ensuring adequate separation from the intersection. There could potentially be some queuing issues at the intersection, but that means on-site queuing for whatever development would happen on this site in the future, that they would have to know that during AM or PM peaks, getting off the site may have slight delays. But again, until a formal application is made on any specific end user, there's not much for me to comment on use. It is certainly something that Public Works Engineering and the city are
My concern is,
coordinating.
my concern, like I said, is the traffic flow, because we're already receiving disruption from when they're dropping off campers during high peak times. And now that Badger Chevrolet, is now dropping off cars and stuff in the middle of Tyrena Boulevard during peak times. And we had to tie up 2 squads, one from the county and one from the state during high peak times. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The public hearing is still open. Are there further comments regarding this rezoning request? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak regarding this rezoning request? Are there any other comments regarding this rezoning request? All right, hearing none, we close the public hearing and we go on to item number 8, discussion recommendation on rezoning request from Ryan Malone to change zoning from rural development RD to planned business PB for property located at West 7411 County Road V, Lake Mills, parcel 018-0713-1214-002. And this recommendation is conditioned upon property first being annexed into City of Lake Mills. Plan commissioners, we do have a Plan Commission motion in front of us, motion 2252, recommendation to City Council for zoning amendment, parcel 018-0713-1214-002 by petitioner Ryan Malone. This motion does set forth the city's zoning authority under state statutes and refers to Municipal Code, Chapter 660, zoning regulations. The annexation process already underway with first reading before the City Council on May 17th. The request to rezone the subject site at the northwest corner of County Road A and Tyrrhenina Park Road from RD Rural Development to PB Planned Business. The review and recommendations by city staff, tonight's public hearing and Plan Commission review. This motion does provide for a Plan Commission recommendation to the City Council to approve the rezoning subject to procedures in Chapter 660 zoning regulations and passage of Ordinance 1234 annexing the property into the city. I will entertain a motion concerning this prepared motion or any further comments or questions of city staff.
I'll make a motion
All right, go ahead.
to approve 2252 zoning amendment.
All right. Dr. Mason has moved to approve motion 2252. Is there a second?
I'll second. Mr. Grady.
A motion by Dr. Mason, second by Mr. Grady to pass motion 2252. Are there further comments?
I just have a comment to address the lady's concerns. I encourage, if any future development happens on this site, to absolutely come and be part of it, address your concerns. The likes of what Dustin said happens at every single one of these site reviews, and it would be great to have you part of it.
This is one of the preliminary steps to anyone being able to utilize the site for any other purpose other than rural. But what happens is that our code does have standards for location of drives and access points, and it does have to meet certain standards for not contributing to traffic concerns where any of these developments are occurring in Lake Mills. So the code is very careful, and also there's quite the engineering review that occurs with these development proposals, which, like has been mentioned, has not come forward yet. So we're not there yet, but you may see something come up in the future. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Ms. Lazaris. The way our ordinances are currently written, a planned business district is appropriate for locations of commercial activities of a more general retail and wholesale nature, and of the office and service facilities. And with the memo we have from Mead and Hunt and the recommendations we're getting from the city, it seems like we're trying to shoehorn lodging and hospitality into this business district. And what could occur, what can occur under the planned business district or any of them in the city, is that somebody as of right could come in and build a 10-story hotel because we're saying that fits under this planned business district. And they can do that as of right. Meaning you can't later, if you find out they're building a hotel you don't like, zone it out from under them to something different. So without more details on the planned lodging facility that's going there, I'm going to vote no on this current motion and recommendation. I want to know, is it an Econo Lodge 2.0? Is it a Marriott going in there? And I do have more questions about the traffic patterns and, the type of hotel that's going and the type of personnel that it could bring to the city. And I think there's more for this commission and the council later on to consider.
Are there further comments? All right, well, hearing none, then we'll proceed with the roll call vote.
Mr. Grady?
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop?
No.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Ms. Lazarus,
Aye.
Mr. Mason.
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0, or 4-1.
4-1. All right. All right, thank you. Our next item is item number 9, public hearing, amending the existing conditional use at 200 Enterprise Drive by applicant Jamie Almquist to add commercial boarding at this same facility, owned by Ryan Scheel. Before we start with public comments, then we would like to call upon our consulting planners to present this conditional use request.
Yes, thank you. So this is a conditional use request amending an original 2014 conditional use for a doggy daycare in the planned industrial district. The request is to board 20 dogs at a time overnight. Within the memo, there's a review of the operational changes that are associated with that additional use, including kind of some of the conditions related to the overnight boarding and the daycare facilities. None of the day-to-day changes, day-to-day operations would change. As part of the memo and the review, there is DATCAP standards that provide standards for care for animal facilities, and those are presented at length in the memo, and the proposal does meet those conditions at this time. Kind of the most relevant one to the overnight boarding would be the duration of stay that animals would stay within their boarding facilities. DATCAP recommends 12 hours, and that is met here. And then obviously additional considerations being like sanitation and heating, cooling, and other environmental conditions related to that. As far as zoning code, there is one other item just as a relevant consideration in section, let me find the correct quote here, 660.88 specifically regulates kennels, and that requires that this type of use is at least 500 feet from any residential properties, and that is met by this proposal as well. So with the site plan evaluation, we didn't see any huge changes or potential impacts to the operation of the site itself in terms of traffic, parking, et cetera. We do have conditional use evaluation. As far as the general industrial use on map 6, it is shown as a planned land use that is complementary to the comprehensive plan. We do not see any potential issues with the character of the development within the context of the neighborhood. It does have the desired consistency of land uses as the current site and neighboring properties have. And public benefits do outweigh any potential adverse impacts here. We do have 3 recommendations. We do recommend approval with these conditions. The first being the maximum number of dogs being 20, and then overnight boarding of other animals is not permitted. To follow DATCAP general standards for care in terms of indoor enclosure standards that is provided in the background of the memo, and then allow a biannual review and inspection of the premises at the request of the city to sort of maintain and ensure that those standards are being met.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carranza. All right, the public hearing is open. Are there any comments concerning this amendment to the conditional use request? I have a concern. Then we ask you to approach the podium, write your name and address, and also announce your name and address for the record.
It's Paul Romagna, 220 Enterprise Drive. I run the business right next to the doggy daycare. I've run it in town here for the last 10 years, moved to 220 probably about 6 years ago, and at that time I think it was a different owner of the dog daycare, but there was a few dogs, wasn't too bad, but as the years got on it progressively got worse with the noise, and I've actually called the city 3 or 4 times. I've called the police. It's 24/7 dogs barking. It's interfering with my business. I have customers over there. I'm trying to carry on a conversation, and then every dog in the neighborhood comes to the fence and is barking away for 20 minutes. I've been over there on a weekend, on a Saturday night, and there was one dog out there that barked for like 40, 50 minutes, and it's loud. And I looked in the, when I talked to the city the first time and they gave me the noise ordinances, it's well beyond that. So, and I have a decibel meter to measure it. So something needs to change. And the business owner and property owner next to me agrees with me. Unfortunately, he wasn't here to make any public comment on it. But, so, you know, you put more dogs there, it's kind of writing off any other business that's gonna ever build there because nobody wants to be next to 40 barking dogs. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. The public hearing is still open. Are there further comments?
Melanie Kolaski, 275 Tamarack Drive, Apartment 7. Our apartment buildings are behind this facility, along with ILT. I am not an employee of ILT. I have been a consultant with ILT in the past on some other matters of business.
Could you talk into the microphone? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I am not an employee of ILT, Independent Lift Truck, of Mr. Romanos. I was a consultant for him for other legal businesses like debt collections and stuff. My son has worked there. My son has Asperger's and is a Lake Mills graduate. We have witnessed at times that when the dogs are supposed to be supervised outside there, out in the play area for the dogs, you see the dogs fighting, you see the dogs barking stuff, normal dog stuff. What you don't see is somebody not paying attention to their phone or on the phone and supervising the animals. That's one problem. Two, I have witnessed that when we are conducting business of selling a forklift or other people come to the business for business, it is a constant disruption. When my son worked at ILT, there was a point in time where my son took 2 days off because he could not work effectively with the dogs, as he puts it, with Asperger's, constantly yammering and not being supervised properly. I pulled him from the business, I brought him home. Paul worked it out. Paul's been wonderful with him. He now works for another company. My other concern is this. You mentioned that there's a 12-hour limit for boarding under the proposal. That doesn't state that she can't board them for 12 hours from 7 p.m. or 5 p.m. and move them into the doggy daycare during the day, which would make it a 24-hour boarding. Because if I drop my dog off at 6 p.m. for boarding, and I have a standard contract with her to provide doggy daycare during the day, that means my dog transitions from boarding to doggy daycare, which eliminates the 12-hour rule and recommendation. So my question for this council and for you is, have you permitted yourself to permits for the state and the county? And have you been inspected? And is this council aware of any inspections or anything inside of the state regulations of this and our county ordinances? I do know that our county has left it up to the local municipalities to govern and maintain the standards. I would like to see this corrected inside of our city, because just because it's not 500 yards or feet to my apartment, it doesn't mean at 7:45 I'm not hearing it. Thank you.
Just to correct one thing, this is the Plan Commission, not the City Council. Just for the record, just need to keep that correct.
All right, thank you.
Jamie Almquist, N7294 Newville Road, Waterloo, Wisconsin 53594. I'm the owner of Laughing Dogs. This conditional use permit request is really only addressing the overnight boarding. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the 12 hours is how long the dogs are left alone. Is that right? Not how long dogs are boarding? I don't know if I can ask, sorry. But that's my understanding.
Within the enclosure is the DACAP recommendation, 12 hours.
Right, so it's not how long, I mean, the circumstances under which people board their dogs are typically when they travel, so of course dogs aren't just boarding for 12 hours. So our dogs are left alone overnight from 8 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. And that's 10 and a half hours, and we have, it's a long story about how this happened, but we have actually been offering this service for 4 years. This is just, I became aware that it wasn't part of our conditional use permit in conversation with the city attorney during COVID, and we weren't boarding any dogs during that time because nobody was traveling, so now we're being inundated with boarding requests, and so I thought it would be a good time to update our conditional use permit. But we have not had a single complaint from any residents about any dogs barking after 8 p.m. Actually, we haven't had any complaints except from them. They have been addressed. The police officers have come to our facility and have said that we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. To my knowledge, there are no state requirements for inspections or permits other than what we've done here with the city, but if there are, I'm happy to do whatever we need to do to get that done. Yeah, so I don't know if that addresses the concerns, but really this permit doesn't change any of what we're already doing. Most of the noise complaints happen during the day. Our staff work with the dogs to try to reduce noise as much as possible. But they're dogs and they bark, much like children yell and scream and run, and our facility is force-free, so we do not take any measures like shot collars or bark collars or any chemical use to deter barking. We'd rather work with them through that, and that's our approach. Our city would. The service that we offer is important, and our clients would really struggle if we did not offer this service. There are not many other facilities locally that do this, and those that are send us people because they don't have space. So.
Can she stay? Just so we can communicate?
We can take it up under item 6 as soon as.
Okay.
I mean, under item, rather, 10. We're going to take it under item 10 for our discussion. We can call it back and suspend the rules at that point. Are there any further public comments concerning this conditional use request? Okay. Did you have anything further you wanted to add?
You have to add it at the mic.
Then we ask you to go to the podium, otherwise people can't hear you at home.
I'd like to know from the Planning Commission how long a conditional permit is enforceable. How long can one have one for a business?
Conditional uses are
Lifetime?
there unless the time limit is imposed for review, then there is no time limit as long as the use exists.
And at the time this one was issued, there was no time limit established?
To my knowledge, it was not.
Thank you.
I don't know if Dan can help on this, but
That was a pretty good explanation. They typically run with the land or the business that's associated with the land, and our typically in full force and effect until taken away. I think that was a pretty good answer by Chairperson Lazaris. Typically, the conditional use permit runs with the land and the use, as long as the property is used in that manner, so long as they comply with the conditions of the conditional use permit, it is deemed in force and effect. It is subject to Plan Commission review and can be pulled for a myriad of reasons, nuisance reasons, for instance, or if the use has changed or if there's something that needs to be addressed. This conditional use permit has existed on this location since 2014. That was established under City Council Resolution 1442, and it has not been pulled. This is subject to an amendment tonight, which would offer the kenneling service, essentially.
I'd just like to add one more comment on the overnight boarding. And I actually kind of saw when it got worse was at like 5 o'clock, all the dogs would leave and I could go out in the yard and work on stuff without the constant barking. And then as of lately, it's just like, it's 24/7. There's dogs out there all the time barking, Sunday morning. So it's really kind of infringing on my property rights. It disrupts my business, my peace. Like it's getting really bad. So I just wanted to add that. And it's in the city limits.
All right, thank you. All right, we are still in public hearing. Are there further public comments concerning this conditional use request? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this conditional use request? Are there further public comments on this request? All right, hearing none, I will close the public hearing and we go to item number 10, which is discussion and recommendation on amending existing conditional use request by Jamie Almquist to add commercial boarding at 200 Enterprise Drive, Lake Mills, parcel 246071418230002, owned by Ryan Scheel. Now, Plan Commissioners, if you want to suspend the rules to allow Ms. Almquist to answer questions, then you may at this time.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Is there a second?
Ryan Grady, second.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Holman and seconded by Mr. Grady to suspend the rules so that Ms. Almquist may be asked questions. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. All right. Would anyone like to ask her questions at this time?
Yeah, I
If
certainly
so,
would.
Ms. Almquist, could you please come to the podium and then we can hear you.
So for all things considered, I'm a proponent of conditional uses, just by definition. It's a use with conditions. Your business is needed because I've used a service like yours when we've been on vacation, just for the humanity of the animal. However, with the conditional use, there are things that need to be considered for your neighbors. And I'm a personal property rights advocate. So it's hard for me to support, for me to support what you're looking for if you can't show some consideration, to your neighbors. On the flip side of that, it's a permitted use. It's the very reason why we have zoning areas, how we put them in order so that we can have businesses and R3 to buffer R1. So I guess my question to you is, when you see the comments from your neighbors, are there things that you could address as far as, you know, the noise at these inopportune times. Excuse me, you know, the 24/7 problem, where you just can't cope with it, and nobody could. I'd just like to hear your response to that.
Sure. So we have already put some fence slats in on the fence, which covers up about half of the side. We can, do the rest of it. The rule is if there's too much barking, they need to close the garage door and bring the dogs inside. So, the dogs go outside to potty right now. The staff are supposed to be working with them. They are also human, right? So one of the things, we have cameras on our staff in our facility all day long. They can watch, our clients can watch it online. That's, for our staff, they are watched. It would be like if somebody had eyes on you every second of your day and nitpicked every little thing that you did. So our staff are held to very high standards in terms of knowing that somebody can see them at any time of the day. And they do work as hard as they can to work with the dogs. Is there barking? Yes, of course, again, because they're dogs. And we do try to be as respectful as we can be, considering that we're working with live animals who have minds and hearts and spirits of their own. I will say that they are not innocent in this. They have barked at our dogs, like literally barked back at our dogs. They yell, they swear over there all the time. I've seen him yanking his children around. The dogs respond to that kind of stuff. And so we have thus not complained. Our staff have been offended by some of the words that they hear coming out of the mouths of the neighbors. But in interest of being a good neighbor, we try to be as respectful as we can, considering the business and service that we offer. In terms of 24/7 barking, that is completely inaccurate. Once the dogs are down for the night, there is very rarely barking, and I know that because I have worked the overnight shift. Prior to COVID, I was there every single night working the overnight shift. The dogs are quiet from 8 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Any surrounding neighbors' residential areas would not be able to hear anything because there is virtually no barking. There may be a very occasional dog that will bark once or twice overnight, but they are tired at the end of the day. That's why we have daycare for them. That's why we offer dog walks for them. Our service is, compared to other facilities, pretty high standards. And we do our best to make sure that the dogs are well exercised, mentally stimulated. Our staff do brain games, food exercises with them. We take dogs that can't play in daycare on walks. We make sure that they get out in the yard and are able to run and play so that they can stretch their legs and they're not in a kennel all day. And that it would be doing the community a strong disservice to reduce that or eliminate it.
Do you have a way to put the problematic dogs in?
We do, we can. The dogs mostly bark at triggers. So triggers are things like neighbors yelling at them or yelling at us or just yelling in general, right? That's a trigger. People walking up to the fence can be a trigger, but by and large, most of the time, if the dogs are out, it's playful barking. It's not alert barking. So there's a difference between alert barking and play barking. And yes, really barky dogs, we encourage them to let them outside potty and bring them back in. And I can absolutely remind my staff about that rule. That's not a problem.
Does anyone else have any questions of Ms. Almquist?
Do you understand what I'm looking for here?
I do, Mr. Homan. It is a challenge because you are dealing with something that has a mind of its own. Generally, I think things that could go into place here could be additional screening, whether it is trying to make the fence a little more opaque or some sort of landscape screening to just provide another mitigation, sightline mitigation. I do not fully understand how they let dogs out or monitor dogs when they're out. Perhaps it's smaller groups of animals going out at a time. I don't want to say that it should be one at a time or three at a time. I don't know if that's very practical. This is an issue, it's just like whether it's two residences and one neighbor says the other's too noisy. It's a very difficult thing to police, but when we put in conditions, the conditions should be reasonable, and they should be, I will say, quote-unquote, enforceable. Something that we can measure, that those conditions have been put into place. You know, when you talk about the overnight, if at 8 p.m. dogs are inside and, you know, most animals, unless they're being, you know, engaged, generally just rest. So I don't know if there's much to that. I think the concern is, by and large, daytime functionality. So I would suggest smaller groups and additional screening on that south side.
If it helps, our current group sizes are between 10 and 15 dogs, depending on the size of the dogs. And they rotate 3 groups outside all day long so that each group gets a chance to go outside. That's true year-round. They spend less time outside in the winter, obviously, when it's colder. We have pools outside, so the dogs, I mean, that's part of their engagement during the summer, is being able to go in the pools. So, yeah, I mean, fence screening is absolutely, we can do the other half of the fence, if that's helpful, and then continue our protocols of making sure that the staff are paying attention to the barking dogs. It will never be eliminated completely. If we got rid of all of the dogs that barked, we'd bring in, you know, we'd have 5 new ones that start. So it's kind of a never-ending battle on that front.
Mr. Hellman, Ms. Lazar, if I could add, I would suggest then maybe some arborvitae evergreen screening on that south lot line, just in a staggered pattern to try to, our minimum planting size is 7 feet. That should provide, I would say, a decent visual break, that if for some reason an animal, something caught its eye through the slatting, that may help, and over time, you know, grow to provide a little more screening. I would say the rest is kind of operational. I would like to think that the operators kind of know which dogs are a little more habitual offenders on the barking, and trying to implement perhaps smaller groups than 10 or 15. It is not something that we will be able to effectively police. So that's the important thing. That's more of an operational, you know, be a good neighbor. Let's try to do something along those lines. The others are things that we can absolutely put in as a condition of approval and to see that they're getting met.
I'm just gonna have to ask this one. I'm just such a, I'm not real big on extra rules. It just goes against everything I stand for. However, we need to do something in this one for the neighborhood. As far as the enforcement side, I'm troubled with, you know, weekly enforcement also. But however, when would be the next opportunity for the either the neighbors or us to review this, because it's obviously a problem. How would the next opportunity for the neighbors, if we were to grant this, a complaint,
It would be a nuisance complaint to the police department unless you put a condition of approval that they are coming back on an annual or semi-annual basis for a review of their conditional use. It's rare that we do that. It certainly has happened.
Yeah, occasionally we have a review if we're not certain about, 100% certain about an approval for conditional use, and we may have a review within a year, sometimes 2 years. So we have had conditional uses come back for a review.
I guess I'd like to hear from other plan commission members on the, you know, this particular one, because we can see that it's affecting the neighbors. Would it be something that we could review?
It affects both the neighbors. The other property owner right next to me wasn't able to make it tonight. So both the property owners next to her are affected. And then there's an empty lot there, which I don't know if it's for sale, but no one's going to build next to a dog daycare.
I do have a question, and it's for Mr. Drescher, and I'm going to sort of put you on the point, sir. If there's a nuisance complaint through the police department, how does that play out in terms of a remedy for the person that has the complaint against them?
In turn, you got to finish it. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, how does a nuisance complaint play out in terms of a remedy or a sanction against the person?
The noise complaints are difficult, especially in the industrial park, yeah. Thank you. Noise complaints are difficult, especially in the industrial park. There are standards in ordinance. I don't know those right off the top of my head. I can certainly look them up right now with regard to decibels that are allowed before 8 p.m. and then after 8 p.m. I think that's the line. It may actually be 10 p.m. But there are different standards in the industrial park compared to like downtown business district, for instance. And frankly, it's tough to enforce. We have one person that's come up and stated that he has a decibel meter and that he's absolutely certain that there is violation that's occurring, and yet the police department has not cited in that circumstance. So to answer your question, upon investigation, if a violation of ordinance has occurred in this circumstance with regard to nuisance, the police department could write a citation. That would be at least a call to court requirement for a hearing, and either pay that fine or come up with some other solution if there is an option that's available. There could be other remedies as well. In this circumstance, since there's a conditional use permit involved, non-compliance with the law is a reason to revoke a conditional use permit potentially. So I believe that the city council has authority to do that. I believe that the plan commission has the ability to make that recommendation. The recommendation could come from staff as well. But those really are the remedies to that specific nuisance violation that I'm aware of.
Thank you. I have something to say, if I may, unless somebody else does.
Certainly.
It seems unfortunately we have 2 or 3 dueling business owners that are adjacent to each other, and I know that that can cause a lot of friction. What I see here, though, is this is in an industrial park, and that does have, as Mr. Joshua was alluding to, different standards in terms of noise requirements. And whether it's barking dogs or an auto shop or machine repair, I think just the connotation of an industrial park has a certain essence to it, that there will be noise, and that's just something to be dealt with, in some ways amongst neighbors, but also in that area, and that's why we do have those zoning locations. What I see with a couple of the comments from the public is that there's excessive noise in their perception, and I'm sure that's what they hear during the daytime hours. What's in front of this commission, though, is an amendment that would be during nighttime hours when the dogs are also inside, and presumably regular business hours are not during that time, so it wouldn't be an additive effect to what the public has mentioned here tonight. And so for those reasons, I don't see this amendment as either addressing or fixing those issues or making it worse, if I can put it that way. Also, to Mr. Hellman's point and my final point, when we look at adding additional restrictions to this petitioner but not similar restrictions to the adjacent business owners, I wonder if that's fair. If there's business being done inside, certainly other business owners have other opportunities to insulate their walls. And so I would look at more of a fairness approach between all sides instead of specifically adding restrictions to this request that's before us today. If there are other complaints about the current business, those should be addressed separately, I believe.
If I may continue for just one moment, I did look up the noise ordinance. It is under our zoning code in 660-147. Table 8.2 provides the maximum permitted sound levels in decibels based on zoning district. We're looking at either PI or I2 in this circumstance. There is a difference between both PI and I1 that are bulked together in this one. In daytime hours, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., they're allowed 70 decibels per, as read at any given moment. I2 allows for a little bit more, 75 at any given moment during that time frame. There is a second set for nighttime hours, that is 10 p.m. until 7 a.m., where the noise allowed is reduced to 65 decibels. So if there are violations of that are documented, you may be able to enforce that. If they are less than that, I mean, it's allowed under the code. So I think there's at least one factor here that is just unknown. But those are the standards that are in place.
Ma'am, did you say that you're already operating in the evening?
Yes, we are. We did not know that we were not, it was not on our conditional use permit, so we've been doing it for 4 years.
And how many dogs?
The most we've had is 20.
Is it
20.
Even
That's
during
the
the last
most.
4 years?
Yeah, yep. And that's very rare. Usually it's more like 4 to 7. A busy holiday weekend might be up closer to 20. Like this upcoming weekend, we have 17 dogs scheduled. So it would be a lot of dogs that would have to find a place really quickly.
Thanks.
If
So the only comment I have is there's nothing more irritating than barking dogs. And I've had a number of them. And, yeah, it's difficult keeping them quiet sometimes, and that sometimes happens. But what's before us is whether or not they have overnight stay here, not to rehash this whole continuous use permit. And I guess my question is, you must have discussed this long before I got on the commission in terms of conditional use permit when it was originally approved. So I don't know the history, and maybe one of you remembers it. I don't know.
I will start, and I'm sure Mr. Wilkie can supplement. The first iteration of a dog daycare was proposed over by one of the vet clinics because it was proximate. It seemed like a great location, except it was surrounded by residential. And from the city's perspective, we felt that, and neighbors came out and said, this is just way too close for us. It's one thing if your neighbor's got a couple of dogs. It's another thing when they've got 10, 15 dogs, right? The industrial park or business park was encouraged because larger properties, obviously fewer residents around here. This site became ideal because the nearest residence is 700 or 800 feet. The Tamarack buildings are 1,300 feet. Putting that in perspective, 1,300 feet is a quarter mile. So again, it was felt that daytime operations in industrial park, they're probably going to make some noises. Other businesses are going to be making some noise in there, and that the dogs really wouldn't provide conflict. Now, I certainly do respect that barking dogs can be irritating. It hasn't risen to a level where we were ever asked to review a conditional use permit since it's been in place for 8 years now, whether or not that was the conditional use permit functioning properly. At that time, it was making sure that they had an fenced enclosed area and that they were, I'll say, supervised when animals were outside. By and large, they were indoors. Steve, is there anything I missed? It is the only one in town. It's important to note that as well. There's not a parade of these things coming into the community, but obviously we embrace pets and we want to make sure that there's a safe place to board them, including the police department uses this facility. I don't know if the city should recuse itself because of that then.
I think that's Police and Fire Commission.
Does anyone else have anything to say before we consider this motion?
I would just add one more thing. If any of you want to come down during the day or anytime and see what I have to deal with on a daily basis, you're more than welcome. And I guess that would be what I would recommend, that if this is going to go forward, then really look at what it is and how it's positioned, because I have video. I mean, the sound echoes. It's incredibly loud. I've got decibel meters that I've gotten from Snap-on. I've measured it. It's well beyond 75 to 80. And then if there's all 20 dogs out there, it's 85 to 90. So if we need to get facts and evidence, and I need to document all that, I will. But this definitely needs to be under further review. Because if there's more dogs now, more overnights, expansion, I mean, I don't know.
If I may add, there's no expansion happening, and it's the same number that we've been dealing with, and all of those concerns have nothing to do with this request. So if he wants to take me back and have my conditional use permit revoked, and he can fight that, however the process is. But that would just be my suggestion, is it all has to do with daytime hours.
Plan commissioners, are there further comments? If not, any plan commissioner may wish to speak up concerning any amendment that you want to see on the motion, and but I will read the motion. I'll go through the motion that is in front of us. The motion before you is motion 2253, recommendation to City Council for conditional use permit dog care and boarding 200 Enterprise Drive, parcel 246-0714-1823-002. This motion does set forth the city zoning authority under Wisconsin state statutes and refers to requirements for conditional uses in the zoning code. The request to amend the existing conditional use to allow overnight boarding of dogs not previously allowed in the original conditional use permit from 2014. The review and recommendations by city staff, tonight's public hearing, and Plan Commission review. This motion does provide for a Plan Commission recommendation to the City Council to grant the requested amendment to the conditional use permit subject to the following conditions. And 1, terms, conditions, recommendations in the planner's memo. 2, the maximum number of dogs allowed to be boarded overnight as 20, and overnight boarding of other animals not permitted. 3, the petitioner must follow Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection general standards and indoor enclosure standards established in the planner's memo. 4, the petitioner shall allow inspection of the premises at the request of the city. As the amendment to an existing conditional use, the Plan Commission must also be able to make the following findings. 1, the conditional use shall not be detrimental to or endanger public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. 2, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the vicinity, nor substantially diminish and impair property values. 3, the use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property. 4, adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and necessary facilities will be provided, and the conditional use will not impose an undue burden on any of the improvements, facilities, utilities, or services provided by the public. 5, adequate measures will be taken to provide ingress and egress so as to minimize traffic congestion. 6, the use shall conform to all applicable regulations of the district in which it is located. 7, the use at its proposed location is in harmony with the purposes, goals, objectives, policies, and standards of the City of Lake Mills Comprehensive Plan. 8, the use at the proposed location maintains consistency of land uses, land use intensities, and land use impacts. 9, the potential public benefits of the conditional use outweigh any and all potential adverse impacts. Well, that is our prepared motion. Commissioners, you may make a motion concerning the prepared motion. You may make a motion if you would like to amend the prepared motion, and you may make actually any motion concerning the prepared motion. Does anyone have anything to say concerning the motion that is in front of us?
Well, I think we still need a motion to approve. Is that correct at this point?
You don't have a motion to approve yet.
Okay.
No one has moved or seconded yet.
This is Ms. Bishop. I move to approve motion 22-5-3, recommendation to City Council for conditional use permit for dog daycare and boarding, 200 Enterprise Drive.
It's been moved by Mrs. Bishop to approve motion 2253. Is there a second to her motion? Yeah, we can continue to discuss if you wish to make a second.
Rick Mason, second.
All right, the motion by Mrs. Bishop and second by Dr. Mason to pass motion 2253. Is there now discussion concerning this motion?
My only curiosity is about if any kind of fencing, opaque fencing, would solve some of the issues that have been raised today that don't deal with overnight fencing, but could hopefully remedy some of the issues that are dealing. I'm looking at a picture right now, and I see that there are some trees in between the lines, but not between the fence, the see-through fence, and then your property. Go ahead. I don't know if we can have an open discussion at this point. That's what's making me pause.
Mm-hmm.
Inasmuch as there are some issues here, the motion before us is only to add overnight stays, so we need to keep that in mind. Pardon me?
She's already in violation of the original. She stated she's had overnight boarding and it was not permitted under the conditional use permit.
Unfortunately, that's not what we're here for tonight. Is that correct?
That is
The hearing's closed, is my stance on this current.
I'm
right,
sorry. I'm
right,
sorry.
correct.
To hear that.
The hearing's closed. We're not open to
Yeah.
forth.
You have not amended the rules here to allow further discussion. This is in the Plan Commission's hands. If there's more evidence that needs to be taken, the Plan Commission can take that action. But right now, I believe that the public has had an opportunity to speak on this issue. That was what the public hearing was for.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right. If there is nothing further and no one wants to propose anything differently, in that case, then I would proceed with a roll call on this motion.
Mrs. Bishop?
Aye.
Mr. Holman?
Aye.
Ms. Lazares?
Aye.
Mr. Mason?
Aye.
Mr. Grady?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you.
Item number 11, public hearing, request for a future land use map amendment from the City of Lake Mills to change the future land use for a part of parcel 246071323120022 located abutting to the south of 1219 South Main Street from planned neighborhood to general industrial. The public hearing, before we open that to public comment, then I'd like to ask the consulting planners to present this request for the future land use map amendment concerning this property.
Thank you. I'm going to put something up on the screen if I can get this correct. There we go. It'll just be a little easier to talk from a visual. And the petitioners are here, and I'm sure they can provide some supplemental information. In a nutshell, Vita Plus at the south end of the community is making some improvements on their site. In order for that to happen procedurally, there's a few things that were going on there. One, they've acquired some land from the property owner to the south. You can see that highlighted in the blue area. A few years back, they acquired a strip of land to the south. Now they're looking to acquire this larger area. The land use amendment is because the lands to the south of them are shown for future multifamily development, should that property owner decide to develop. Because Vita Plus is acquiring this small piece and is looking to rezone the property as a separate agenda item to a planned development district, we don't allow split zoning on properties. We need to ensure that the comprehensive plan is addressed to potentially enable the rezoning to occur and to have singular zoning on the property. Let me switch over here. I know this is a little challenging to view. In essence, the large gray box in the center is the existing Vita Plus property. It is shown for general industrial. To the south of them is shown for future planned neighborhood district. As we switch, what they're proposing, as you can see here, is the land that they're acquiring to include that as part of a certified survey map. That's a separate process that is in process, but to add this smaller gray area to their existing land holdings for operations and buffering. So the first action or public hearing item is whether or not a future land use amendment should be approved to allow the conversion from planned residential to general industrial. As you can see, there is industrial on the north side of the green strip is the trail, the Glacial Drumlin Trail. There's industrial on the north side of that, and further to the east as well.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. The public hearing is open. Does anyone wish to speak to this land use change request? Are there any public comments concerning the requested change in land use for the future land use map? Does anyone wish to speak to this proposed change in land use? None, the public hearing is closed. We go on to item number 12, discussion and recommendation on request for future land use map amendment from the city to change the future land use for part of parcel 2460713 2312-022 located to the south of 1219 South Main Street from planned neighborhood to general industrial. Plan Commissioners, we have in front of us the prepared motion 2254, recommendation to City Council for a future land use map amendment, part of 1349 Topels Street, City of Lake Mills, Wisconsin, part of parcel 2460713-2312-022. This motion does set forth the city's zoning authority under Wisconsin's, the city's land use and zoning authority under Wisconsin state statutes, and refers to the comprehensive plan requirements for amending the future land use map. The review and recommendations by city staff. Tonight's public hearing and the Plan Commission review. This motion does provide for Plan Commission recommendation to the City Council to amend the future land use map as requested. Are there any motions concerning the prepared motion, or anyone want to comment on anything beforehand? Mrs. Bishop.
Okay, Mr. Wolf, I appreciate your explanation. I swear I was paying attention. there's like I'm exaggerating, there's like
are.
5 agenda items for this one parcel.
There are, yes.
And so I'm trying to piece it together.
It's an order of operations. Right? It's
Okay.
like a math problem,
That,
right?
the order of operations helps. So this current resolution before us, 22-5-4, says in the header, for part of this parcel number. So help me reconcile that with what you said, that we can't do split zoning for parcels?
Can't. So there is a condition that the certified survey map gets approved as a part of all this to formally combine the part of one parcel with the existing other parcel.
And the certified survey map is under heading 2 down, just if you want to review that right now.
Yes, I can certainly put the,
Yeah, if we could kind of can we talk about all of these, Mr. Drescher? Is that okay? Because they all interrelate?
I would focus on this one, but I have no problem whatsoever with you viewing the certified survey
Okay.
map prior.
Sure, thank you.
oh boy, and I don't know if I'm able to rotate.
Good,
There
I'm
we
glad
go.
to hear that I'm not the only one that,
I'm just the only
sorry.
one
Figure
admitting
this
to
out.
it.
Yes, it is a lot of moving parts, and
and then also, Dustin, they did something that they weren't supposed to do?
that was part of the rectifying as a part of the
Yeah.
rezoning. So,
All right.
so
you
the
address
order of,
that?
the
Yeah.
order of operations here is, the land use amendment. So as you can see from the certified survey map that's on the screen, it shows their existing building, the grain bins, et cetera, on their existing property. If you see the small dashed portion, they added that a few years ago, and we did rezone it and had a land use amendment at that time to do that. At this time, they've acquired, or in the process have acquired from the Topels, this, I'll say sliver here, along Main Street, immediately to the south of the existing building. No road is planned to go through there per any of the adopted plans. A certified survey map is a administrative review, so it doesn't come before you. It is in the process of that administrative review right now, and then it would get recorded. So as you can see that the property would go, I'm just gonna say, sort of looks like a number 1 on its side if you add this. But the first element to all of their requests ultimately is to be making, there's certain improvements they want to make, which is why they want to go to the Plan Development District. But if the Plan Commission does not feel that the criteria met to amend the comprehensive plan, we are not going to be able to rectify the rest of the items with rezoning and the conditional use. So
Okay.
that's the order of operations. The first element is getting the land use in order.
So they bought, I'm just going to rephrase it in my own words.
Yes.
The petitioner bought this lower portion, which is this quadrangle, whatever you want to call it.
Correct.
And it's a portion of what was originally platted. So when the certified survey map does get recorded, that's going to be its own lot. And that's why we're calling in this motion it a portion of the parcel. I'm
No,
getting
it's
no back-
consolidated with the parcel to the north.
Yes.
It is consolidated, it's
But-
combined with that. That's the purpose of the certified
But the
survey map.
motion in front of us right now is to rezone it, not to consolidate it.
Correct. Well, this is, the
which
motion in
is
front of you
just
right
for
now
the
is to amend the
land
future
use.
land use map with regard to that portion that is being consolidated with the northern portion.
Yes. So if we go to the Topel property that they're acquiring this from, I'm just going to click on it. You can see it's a very large parcel, right? I'm just going to click over here so you can see it. They are only, if you can see this cursor, they're only looking to acquire the area near Main Street, right? So that's why there is referenced part of this parcel, just that small portion, as Mr. Drescher indicated, that will be combined to this property with the certified survey map process.
Okay, if we're looking at order of operations and just zoning this industrial so that it matches the current use on the Vita lot, I'm okay with that for this current motion. I was just trying to figure out how that
Yes.
fits later down the line.
That is correct.
Okay. I'll have more questions. Thank you.
Can you go back?
Of course. Do
Can you go back to the previous
you want the aerial?
one? Yeah,
Okay.
okay, point it out again, or use your little right
It's hard
there.
to see this cursor.
And that's on the south side?
South side, so this, so,
Exactly south.
Switch to the different.
Yeah.
what? Oh, yeah, that's just. So they are looking to add,
Practically see the line.
this little bit of acreage at the east end to the property to the north. It is currently tilled land, it's farmland. Yep. See if I can,
Essentially, all of Vita Plus, including the new parcel they purchased, will be zoned industrial. That's the ultimate goal. And the land
Yes.
use part of it is that state statute requires our comprehensive plan be consistent with what we ultimately end up zoning. So we have to do the land use first, and then we have to come back and do the,
zoning, and then there's a conditional use for certain operations they want,
yep.
all of which require separate public hearings. Separate actions.
Well, is anyone wishing to make a motion concerning this motion to amend the future land use map?
Steve Holman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the motion as presented.
Ms. Bishop seconds.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Holman and seconded by Mrs. Bishop to move motion 2254, amending the future land use map concerning this particular property. Any further discussion? In that case, then we'll proceed with the roll call vote.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Ms. Lazares,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Grady,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop.
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
The next motion, or we might say step, is item number 13, public hearing, request on rezoning from John Tramburg to change the zoning from planned industrial to planned industrial with planned development district overlay for the property owned by Lake Mills Feed and Grain, parcel 246071323111017, and from multifamily residential to planned industrial with development district overlay for the portion owned by Topels Lakeside Park identified as parcel 246071323120022. Before we commence with any public comment, then we'll call on the consultants to go over the requested zoning amendment, the rezoning.
Thank you. So the request ultimately is when the properties are combined to rezone them both to planned industrial with the planned development district. The reason that they are requesting the planned development district is the property is very challenging to work with. It's very narrow and very long. And we have very specific code requirements regarding setbacks for paved areas, setbacks for buildings, green space requirements, screening requirements, and such. They are doing their best to comply with all of them, but because of how narrow the existing property is, and they certainly did pursue acquiring more land from the neighboring property to the south, but that property only chose to sell them so much land. So again, we can't force someone to sell land, but the petitioners need to expand their operations. And they have considerable investment there now with the multiple grain silos, bins, processing, and then, of course, office facilities. This came to our attention when they had made some improvements out there as they needed to for their operations. When it was brought to our attention, we reached out to them and said there are specific requirements that have to be abided by. The petitioners have met diligently with the city staff to address those issues. It's not an uncommon occurrence. They just needed to have more impervious surface for certain operations. They are acquiring or have acquired new equipment that they want to install. They need to make sure that they have good circulation for farm equipment, et cetera, on the site. And again, we've met with them diligently over a number of months to get to this point. The site will not, without removal of either buildings or paved surfaces that would make it difficult to circumnavigate the site, will not meet certain minimum requirements for setbacks for hard surfacing. So that has been the first kind of big hurdle to overcome, which is why they're looking at the Plan Development District. They are looking to have 5-foot setbacks of pavement from the north and south property lines at the rear of the site. They are looking to put in some landscaping to provide screening as we require from the north and the south. But they are, as I said, very constrained on their site as it relates to its width and trying to have sufficient drive aisles, location for their new equipment in relation to the existing bins to ensure that they have a safe site. A second piece of what they want to do is, because they do take in a lot of trailers and farm equipment, that they want to be able to store or stage equipment at the, I'll say, the rear of the site, which is the far west end of the site. That is the conditional use that is being requested as the next agenda item. So this public hearing is to rezone to the Plan Development District. They are specifically asking for some relief from the code, certain exemptions that are afforded a property owner under a Plan Development District. They want to reduce the side yard setback for drive aisles or edge of pavement from 15 feet to 5 feet. They want to reduce the perimeter landscaping yard from 15 feet to 5 feet, the screening buffer from 8 feet to 5 feet, and then the parking buffer for outdoor storage from 15 feet to 5 feet on the side yards. And again, it is a constrained site, as we were showing you, to make sure that they can meet certain turning radii, have certain aisle widths, et cetera. The minimum the city said would be sufficient to ensure for drainage and screening is 5 feet. It is not an ideal situation, but this is a challenge because we have a longstanding existing operation that predates not just the code we have now, but the code we had even before this. So there weren't the same regulations in place when they constructed all the initial improvements. This graphic is showing where some of the screening and the exemptions would be highlighted in the yellow. Generally, it's to the west end of the building. I think if you're driving by on Main Street, it wouldn't look any different to you. If what is being requested is approved, what you would see from the Drumlin Trail is additional screening that doesn't exist there now between the trail and their drive aisles and existing operations. There were a series of conditions that we've highlighted, and they are again prefaced on the finalizing and recording of the certified survey map, the land use amendment, conditional use approval, et cetera, some additional landscape screening. So we do need to hammer out a few details with the landscape plan as it relates to the new land that they're buying to make sure that screening meets our requirements, that there are some these are just minimum code requirements, 7 foot for evergreen trees, just to make sure that those are clearly illustrated on the plans. A snow storage plan will be necessary. They will have green space on the west end. It's not that it can't be done, but we always require a snow storage plan to ensure that it is handled effectively. And then we haven't seen any additional engineering or public works requirements at this time, but if there's any of those outstanding. And the petitioners are certainly here to answer any questions that you may have. I don't know which graphic would be best to show you here. We'll just go to the aerial.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wolf. The public hearing is open. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on this proposed rezoning request with planned development? Are there any comments concerning this planned rezoning request with planned development? Does anyone wish to speak on this proposed rezoning request, which includes the planned development overlay? All right, hearing none, we go on to item 14, discussion recommendation on request on zoning amendment by John Tramburg for changing the zoning from planned industrial PI to planned industrial with planned development district overlay for a property owned by Lake Mills Feed and Grain at 24607132311-017, and from multifamily residential, R312, to planned industrial with development district overlay for a portion of the parcel owned by Topels Lakeside Park, identified as parcel 24607132312-022. There is a motion before us. Plan Commission Motion 2255, recommendation to City Council for zoning amendment, parcel 24607132311-017, and part of parcel 24607132312-022 by Lake Mills Feed and Grain Incorporated and Topels Lakeside Park Incorporated. This motion does set forth the city's land use and zoning authority under Wisconsin state statutes and refers to Municipal Code Chapter 660, the zoning regulations for zoning classification. The petitioner's submission of a certified survey map consolidating the parcel at 1349 Topel Street and 1219 South Main Street. The proposed rezoning of the parcels from planned industrial and multifamily residential to planned industrial with planned development district overlay. The review by city staff and consultants and the recommendation, tonight's public hearing and plan commission review. This motion does provide for a plan commission recommendation to the city council to approve the requested rezoning subject to procedures set forth in Chapter 660 zoning regulations and requirements noted in the planner's memo, which are one, and we have seen the proposed certified survey map, 2, the future land use map amendment, 3, conditional use permit revision, 4, landscape plan showing a screening of loading facilities, 5, landscape planting list revised to indicate the minimum 7-foot planting for evergreen trees, 6, a snow storage plan, and 7, any additional recommendations from engineering and public works staff. Does anyone wish to make a motion concerning the prepared motion or have anything to say beforehand? Mr. Wolf? Oh, Mrs. Bishop.
Yeah, can I restate it again for my own understanding? Okay, we did the future land use map. Now we're looking at changing the zoning on these parcels, and the planned development district, well, it doesn't change the use, it actually changes the exceptions, which would then provide for actually more screening and a storage use plan, and it sounds like more thought out use of the parcel.
Yes, so if you've been out to the site, the front, I'll say the front meaning the east end where the staff and general public park is all hard surface. From there it transitions to gravel. We require hard surface. They are going to be installing hard surface around, I'll just say around the bins and the new, I'll say processing piece that they're installing. I can't say I understand all of the things that they do on site. Because that hard surface, right, is not there now, we can't say it meets a certain setback. It does not, it's gravel.
And that setback is what's set in place by the current zoning, but the
Correct.
overlay is going to help us ameliorate some of that.
Yes, so we get an improved situation where we have a dustless surface on areas that there isn't one now, but they can't physically meet. If they met the 15-foot setback, they wouldn't be able to get any of their equipment or trucks or anything around on it because it would be too close to the buildings. So That's why the exception for 5 feet is being requested and recommended by the staff.
And
The hard surface will end at the west end, where then they want to have parking of trailers and other things. They don't want, there's a lot of that, they're not going to be parking it on hard surface. But anywhere that generally be driven on will have a hard surface, so that's the exception.
so I'm also looking at the lot on Google Maps from Sandy Beach, and you can see what appears to be past the drum line. If I'm looking south, you see the bins that are on the lot, but it sounds like some of the exceptions were including here would provide for some screening at about a person's height. So from the trail or from the road on the north side, you may not see that directly.
Correct. The planting size would be 7 feet for a series of arborvitae that they are going to plant on the north edge of the pavement being installed, generally between the pavement and the glacial drumlin trail, but on their private property. So yes, it'll start at 7 feet. They grow pretty quickly. I defer to Brian as landscape architect on that issue.
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
They own the house on the south side too, is that right? They own the property? No?
No, they do not own the house. That's owned by the Topels.
No.
Sorry, you're talking the house?
Yeah, the house.
Yep, no, that is owned by the Topels, who own also this farmed land. Or cousin? Cousin, sorry. There's a lot of Topels.
And I apologize. The vegetation on the Main Street side, or I guess that would be Topel Street, you would
Yes.
see from A.
So that is an area where we need to refine some of the plantings that would be on the kind of southeast end of the site.
And has the residents on the south side been notified about this?
They would have received, yes, a notification for all of the hearings.
I believe, Ryan, that they've lived there for quite a while and that use has been there for quite a while, so
Thanks.
this would actually be more screening than they've ever had, other than when there's corn there.
Thank you.
And I think the asphalt surface will help immensely with any dust in the summer months.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve 2255 zoning amendment.
Steve Holman, second.
It's been moved by Dr. Mason, seconded by Mr. Holman to pass motion 2255. Are there any further comments? All right, in that case, we'll proceed with a roll call vote.
Ms. Lazares,
Aye.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Grady,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Mr. Holman.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
The next item is number 15, public hearing request for conditional use from John Tramburg for general processing and outdoor storage at 1219 South Main Street, Lake Mills, parcel 2460713231117, owned by Lake Mills Feed and Grain, and part of parcel 24607132312, owned by Topels Lakeside Park. Before we have public comment, then we'll ask for an overview by the consulting planners concerning the conditional use request, and you may comment on some of the things involved with that in your report.
Thank you, Mrs. Zaris. I'm just going to direct you to the image on the screen from the memo. The red box that's being highlighted there is an area that they're looking to have that outdoor storage, as we've discussed previously. As you look to the right of that, or what is to the east, you can see some of the silos. There's hard surface planned for around those silos. You can see that the hard surface ends, and that's where it would transition to where they will have a gravel surface or a crushed aggregate surface where they will be parking or requesting to park semi-trailers that have been processed or will be processed for the silos in the new manufacturing. There will be screening around this, but our code is very specific when it comes to both outdoor storage and storage not on a hard surface. It requires a conditional use. JMEC in the industrial park is one of those where, again, their activities outside are such that a lot of heavy equipment being moved around, a lot of storage of materials. They have screening around, but into that screened area is hard surface. Just based on the moving and things around, it would break down pretty quickly with that. So this is, there isn't it's not being specified how many trailers will be out there. It's a little hard for them to predict during harvest season, I will say, what's going to be there at what time, but it will be screened. It will be a defined area.
All right.
Also to note, it's got to be 1,000 feet at least from the nearest roadway.
Yeah. So in the report, there was a comment on including partially permeable material for outdoor storage area that is, I believe there's a comment that should the conditional use permit pass, then that should be part of it to allow for that use of partially permeable material.
Yeah, I'm sorry, our code does not really make a doesn't distinguish between that. It's either considered an impervious surface or a permeable surface, not a partial permeable surface. So we view it as being impervious, but not meeting our standard for an asphalt or concrete surface as outlined in the code. So that's why the conditional use is very specific on that.
All right. Mm-hmm. All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. We are in public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on the proposed conditional use? Would anyone like to speak on the conditional use request? Are there any comments concerning this conditional use request? All right, hearing none, we go to item 16. We close the public hearing and go to item 16. Discussion recommendation on a conditional use request from John Tramburg for general processing and outdoor storage at 1219 South Main Street, Lake Mills, parcel 24607132311-017, owned by Lake Mills Feed and Grain, and part of parcel 24607132312-022, owned by Topels Lakeside Park Incorporated. We do have a prepared motion in front of us. Motion 2256, recommendation to City Council for conditional use permit, parcel 24607132311-017, and part of parcel 24607132312-022 by Lake Mills Feed and Green Incorporated and Topels Lakeside Park Incorporated. This motion sets forth the city's zoning authority under Wisconsin state statutes referring to municipal code chapter 660 regarding requirements for conditional uses. the conditional use application by Lake Mills Feed and Grain for general processing and outdoor storage. Review and recommendations by city staff and consultants. Tonight's public hearing and Plan Commission review. This motion does provide for a Plan Commission recommendation to the City Council to approve the conditional use subject to the site plan meeting requirements as noted in the planner's memo, and also subject to conditional use approval to use partially permeable material for outdoor storage area. If that's appropriate, it's not actually in here.
That would be fine.
Okay, all right. And then further in this motion, the Plan Commission does make the following findings pursuant to conditional use findings. A, the proposed conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. B, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity or substantially diminish and impair property values. C, the use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property. D, adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and/or other necessary facilities will be provided. E, adequate measures will be taken to provide ingress and egress to minimize traffic congestion. F, the use shall in all respects conform to applicable regulations of the zoning district in which it is located. G, the use at its proposed location is in harmony with the purposes, goals, objectives, policies, and standards of the City of Lake Mills Comprehensive Plan. H, potential public benefits of the conditional use outweigh any and all potential adverse impacts. And the reference beforehand to the planner's memo refers to conditioned upon, as we had mentioned before, 1, certified survey map, 2, future land use map amendment, 3, lands rezoned from planned industrial and R312 to planned industrial with planned development overlay, 4, landscaping plan showing screening of loading facilities per section 660.113, 5, landscape planting list revised to indicate the minimum 7-foot planting for evergreen trees, 6, no storage plan, 7, any additional recommendations from engineering and public works staff. So that's the motion in front of us. Does anyone want to make a motion regarding this or have anything else to say beforehand?
Ryan Grady, I'll motion for the approval of 2256.
Ms. Bishop seconds.
All right. It's been moved by Mr. Grady, seconded by Mrs. Bishop to pass motion 2256. Any further discussion? In that case, I'll call for roll call vote.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mr. Grady,
Aye.
Mrs. Bishop,
Aye.
Mr. Holman,
Aye.
Ms. Lazarus.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Our next item is number 17. Beforehand, we have had 6 public hearings, and I will now call for a 5-minute break, and let's return after 5 minutes. Yes. Okay. All right, time's up. Our break is over. Now we're going to resume our meeting. Thank you, everyone. Our next item is number 17, discussion on comprehensive plan update. And we turn it over to our consulting planners.
Part B, another 3 hours will be fine. No. We have a very abbreviated, we knew tonight was a long agenda with all the public hearings. It's some updating on the schedule, some of the public involvement, and touching again on future land use. But if I'm moving through some things too quickly, please tell me. But we knew tonight was going to be very light on comprehensive plan because of all the other agenda items. So here we are in May. We are obviously in the heart of still public input, public involvement, gaining feedback. A couple of things are sliding a little bit related to focus groups, and that's okay. We're still in a point where we can get good feedback at the front end of this process. That's really the important part. I want to reiterate that. We are not, we've been working on background chapters, so it's not like we haven't been doing other things, but we aren't, as we've talked about in the past, going to start moving into any discussions of whether it's recommendations, policies, objectives, et cetera, until we've gotten the public feedback and gotten it summarized in a way that you're presenting it to you in a way that you feel is going to be best for weighing in on each of those chapters as we start to undertake them. And we've, as you've mentioned, talked about the land use stuff. Tonight, from a public involvement, you know, the public comment form is available. That's for anybody to submit a general comment about anything that concerns them in the community. It can be as specific as chapters or just issues in the built environment that they want addressed or questions that they may have. It's just an open comment form. I haven't seen any submitted yet, but I'm hoping some people do. And then again, of course, that's right there on the front page of the city's website. The focus group, I'm just going to jump in here to talk about the focus group meetings. When we last spoke with you, you wanted more detail on who, and so we've taken feedback from you, from the staff. We've sent that around to be evaluated by you. Tonight, it would be ideal if we could get some level of blessing on groups, and if there are certain groups you feel it hasn't been fully fleshed out, we want that feedback, but we would like to start getting some scheduled if you feel comfortable as we start working through this. So we have an intergovernmental group, which is really surrounding towns, the county, and the school district personnel. I view this one as pretty straightforward, but, you know, there was a challenging group to schedule because they're very busy people as well. So are you comfortable with this?
Mm-hmm. And plan commissioners, how does that look?
This looks good to me, Mr. Wolf. I appreciate you going through and giving this detail and planning these lists out for us for our review.
Of course, we want you to hear from the people that are going to help you provide plan direction. So, the housing group, the Lake Mills Housing Authority obviously has been very involved in housing issues. A couple local developers, of course, and then local realtors. These are the two developers that have, I say, been doing the most in the single-family realm. There is certainly a developer that has done a fair amount of multifamily. They aren't listed here, but we could certainly bring them in as well if you'd like us to speak with them, or ask that. We can ask them to participate. That's really all we can do is ask people to participate. And then again, local realtors. I know there was concerns. Are we bringing someone in from Milwaukee or Madison? No, we want to hear from your realtors on what they're seeing in the market, and the same from your developers. What's good? What's what they would like to see change, concerns they have.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right. Plan commissioners, how does that look to you? Does anyone have anything to say?
Environmental groups, the advocacy groups, Joint Rock Lake Improvement, and then Jefferson County Land and Water. Those are the predominant ones that we see here. I know that we could reach out to DNR, et cetera, but I think having the local concerns here highlighted is going to be the most important. And we're going to let them obviously decide who they want to have participate. Right? It's not going to be the whole organizations. It's a little unwieldy.
Mr. Wolf, your institutional group, is that a government entity, quasi, community?
So Jefferson County Land and Water, again, they've been very involved with, I'll say, lakefront issues,
Okay.
Shoreline issues. That is a department of Jefferson County.
Okay, got it, thank you.
The community organizations from, the civic groups, we heard Mr. Foster had said, make sure we're talking to Club 55. We have, I'm not sure if we're missing anybody here. Again, we do want to cast a wide net. They do serve such an important function in the community. Large employers that have been identified: JMAC, Fiberdome, Crystal Farms, the Industrial Park, Horizon, Astelin, Hammerhead, and Selgin. General commercial, Lake Mills Market, Loader Oil, the bank, and the brewery. I know it's not an exhaustive list, but I think it's a good cross-section of those who've been plugged in on issues in the past. If there are a couple others you'd like us to reach out to in that section, we certainly can. So the downtown business groups, Legendary Lake Mills, which is the chamber / Main Street organization, and then specifically identified businesses. I see Mary and Pat Doyle are here. Troy Kloss, Rob Lewis, Eli Weedle, and John Heidi Black. We certainly can include others if there are downtown businesses that truly really want to be involved here. We certainly would welcome them. This is I'll say the starting point that we've had.
I do just want to, for a point of clarification, Mrs. Doyle owns a separate business, the Corner Mercantile, and so the couple does represent two separate businesses.
Excellent point. Just
Okay. I know, I just want to be clear.
Put them together. My apologies. Just
That's okay.
Kind of think of them as together in downtown. So.
Well, they are that as well.
So if there are, if something else kind of jumps out at you in the next few days, let us know. But these are the groups as we understand that you would like us to talk to, and we'll start engaging them to get them scheduled. Community survey. Give me a second to switch over to the survey. Again, I am not going into a lot of detail on the survey because it's still live. The thing I want to talk about, we're at almost 700 responses, which is great. The city has kind of vaulted it up their social media postings to prioritize it, so it really jumps out there. Flyers were in utility bills. We are kind of hearing that maybe not everybody got one, so they went in the residential and the non-residential utility bills. The bills may go to someone who owns a building but isn't the tenant, and that could be a concerning issue. They have been posted in civic buildings. We've certainly tried to make it available to anybody who wants it. The Legendary Lake Mills has been, I'll say, our conduit to the business community about providing it to them. It's a little challenging for us to get out to every business, but they are already speaking with them, so we do have to rely on them in that capacity. We are going to have to start looking at, I'll say, an end date to this, so we can kind of have a line in the sand so we can start compiling results for you. I'm going to suggest maybe like June 15. At that point, it'll have been a couple months. I think if people wanted to respond, they would respond by then, and that'll give us the ability to start bringing some information back to you in detail. Are you comfortable with that? We don't want to stop somebody's ability to respond, but there's a point where we have to take this data and move forward to start doing plan development with you.
Question to your question. What the focus groups, what's the rollout for that? Like when?
We're going to try to get to them through the early part of June. We try to schedule them kind of long days for us, but try to back. These are very busy people, so we're going to be working with them on trying to get some days. But I would like to think by next plan commission, we're going to hopefully get through them. Doesn't mean we'll have all the summary compiled, but you know, we want to get their input as early as possible.
So they haven't started yet?
They have not yet. We've not scheduled anything. We wanted to make sure that we had, I'll say, your blessing before we did any of that. So thoughts on this survey of just saying, kind of truncating it on 6/15. That will be somewhere in the 10-week mark. I'm looking at 8-9 week mark.
That gives the council another date to kind of put it out there.
Okay.
As well, because our next meeting is on the 7th. And can we, if we're going to pick an end date, can we add that to the city website under the link? Okay, thank you.
Of course, yes. And generally, that's more for us to say, this is the date when we can really start compiling. There might be some that will trickle in. I mean, we could shut it off altogether, or we can just track, here's kind of what's come in since then. So 700 responses is quite good. We've worked with our communities that are twice their size that have had fewer responses. So I don't want you to think that, if you're looking for some context, this is quite good. I have all the results to date on here. I am not, as I mentioned last time, going to go through all of them for a couple of reasons. One, time. Two, I don't want to sway anybody who's still yet to complete it because they didn't, I'll say, quote unquote, like a response. But here you have overwhelmingly homeowners responding. Truly was hoping for more renters to respond. We do want to hear from the rental community on things. Just very quickly, you can see that, oh, I had a little thing away. 600 of them nearly are homeowners. So overwhelmingly, like I said, your rental population, it's an important population. We do want to hear kind of what their needs are. So
and they're
trying
like
to make
40%, 50% of the population, right?
30%.
Of your housing units?
I see. Well, of the general population?
Not quite that. I think about 2/3 of your of all your housing units are
Rentals?
single family. Yeah. So we will eventually have a breakdown of that. I just don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry about population numbers, but if you're talking about 1/3 of your housing stock, it is important to hear from them. I'm jumping ahead to just things that I've highlighted that are length of time in Lake Mills, over 10 years overwhelmingly, but we're still getting a good cross-section of people who've been here less time, so that's good to hear, newer residents. How long have you worked in Lake Mills? This shouldn't surprise us, but it does lean a little heavier than I thought it would be. Most people who have responded overwhelmingly do not work here. We obviously knew that most people that live in Lake Mills, commute out, but I was still a little surprised by the number of respondents that don't work here. We have a good cross section of ages, as you can see here. It's kind of a good bell curve, which is great. We usually don't get a lot in the under 25, so that's not surprising. Number of children under 18 in your household. Over 50% don't have any children under the age of 18 in their household. That's an important thing to understand when you start filtering through responses about what they feel about the community, right? So when you're looking at numbers, almost 400 respondents don't have children, so or are grown. So the likelihood is that they don't have children. Sorry, I'm just running through some things quickly. You can see that there's a lot of data here. Again, very important for people that things are walkable. And that's going to be important as we talk about growth issues and making sure that they're connected. And it is a pushback issue that we get from the development community about certain types of requirements for amenities. So, but it's going to be an important mobility issue for the comprehensive plan. Highlighting here that we are generally out of industrial land and, should more be made available, and if so, where? This is pretty even on whether it's north side, east side, or I don't think the city should do this. That's going to be an important discussion point when it comes to talking about land use and economic development. So the only reason I point that out there is that if you don't grow with any non-residential land or value, that means it's all being borne by residential, right? So, of course, it's cut off. 1 second. Most needed in Lake Mills. So housing affordability, retail and restaurants, right? Vibrant downtown, protection of natural resources are the ones that jump out most notably. A little bit on parks. Should there be neighborhood parks in newly established neighborhoods? Yes. Do you support more multi-use trails being constructed to connect parks and the Glacial Drumlin Trail? Yes. Obviously, he's had a pretty good track record with some key pathways and such, but that's going to say continue to do so. Some of the last ones I had here. Is it easy to bicycle around the community? And where do you get information about governmental meetings? And I would just say governmental meetings was also intended to mean like just city info. But social media sites, most notably. So I think that's one of the things I'm going to say. We're going to have to prioritize this as a community as a way to reach out to the public, which I know that there's a staff person that takes on some of that responsibility, but it may be something bigger picture that you're going to be looking at a staff person who really does have a focal point of their job tasks to make sure that that's happening, to get information out. Because people are relying on it, right? Website and local newspaper, and again, word of mouth is pretty high. So word of mouth is great, except a little bit scary because you don't know what's being said, right? You don't know if it's accurate information or inaccurate information, right? It's great that people are talking. We're hoping that the information is accurate. So that's what I wanted to highlight so far on the survey. Any kind of questions on that? I'm sorry, based on the way this is laying out, I have the video always seems to be in the wrong place on my screen. So revisiting the land use chapter again, you've had it for a while now. I'm hoping to be able to kind of get into it a little bit. Talking about some of the goals and objectives. We're not going to go in a lot of details, just to kind of remind you, refresh. I'm looking to my left. Dwayne is here. Dwayne's your assistant to the Director of Public Works. There's going to be a point next month where we're going to start talking about community facilities because you need to understand some of the infrastructure associated with growth in certain areas. But we have our projections that we talked about last month and the previous month, generally kind of growing at 1% a year, which is a very manageable number. That's been your historic growth, but it does enable you to ensure that you're providing the type of service that residents have grown to expect. You're maintaining the quality of life. It also tells you how much acreage you're going to need over time. And so we don't need thousands of acres of future growth areas, right? I think the plan that was done, that's the currently adopted plan that was done in 2013. Well, I got that date wrong.
2009.
2009.
Yeah.
I think it was a little aggressive at that time.
Yeah.
It was it was really pre-market crash, housing market crash stuff. I think, you were seeing growth pressures, but I think we were probably a little aggressive in how much growth was being expected. I think a part of that, though, was the north side, that someone was coming in
Right.
on the north side. A developer had come in and said, I want to develop the entire north side.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that was one of the things that led to a lot of acreage being illustrated. But we talked last month about these growth areas, and if you've had a chance to kind of think about them, maybe drive through them a little bit, are we still comfortable with these growth areas? The one on the, I'll say, kind of around Milford is the one that always kind of jumps out at me as and we're going to talk about it with the community facility stuff, but I would say it's probably the longest term, if there's a growth area, is that one.
Mm-hmm.
And reiterating what we talked about last month with the future land use goals and objectives is reviewing these, right? Do they still hold true? Are these the things that we are trying to achieve in the future land use chapter? And if you looked at the plan, to kind of just refresh yourself, as we talk about specific land uses, there are specific goals and objectives with specific land uses. But big picture things, is this what we're trying to do? Are we still focused on compact development patterns? Meaning we don't want to I'll say sprawl out. We want to make sure that development is how we expect it to be in size. And you could see when you looked at the when you were responding to the survey, we had some very specific questions about what people, how they feel about development that's in the community and what they expect coming up. We want to be able to provide that information to you so you can weigh it with how you feel the if or how the community should grow. Are we still prioritizing preservation of environmental corridors and environmental resources, right? I'll jump down to number 5 on the list, which is providing adequate areas for residential, commercial, industrial development of varying intensities and size. As you saw from one of the questions, there's a contingency respondents that are questioning if there should be more industrial land, and that's something you're going to have to tackle. And I always kind of look to the city manager as there are always operational and tax implications of if you make a certain decision, right? If you shift away from non-residential development, that means more of the operational tax burden gets borne by residential, right? Promoting infill development was a big priority of the last plan.
Is there an opportunity to add to these?
Of course there is, yeah.
Especially like with like protecting landowners. And one thing I think about is that straight line graph that we look at.
This one?
Yeah, it just keeps going up, which is interesting. If there's anything that we can do to potentially stall that, if that's what the community wants.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a realistic growth projection that is a very manageable, I'll say number in the sense of expected new residents and the impact on how much land area you're going to need to support them. More infill development means being able to serve them under existing infrastructure, right? I'll look at the Century site across the street, right? If you have a residential development on the Century site across the street, well, it's already surrounded by parks and roads and utilities, right? You don't have to maintain more because you're already maintaining it. You don't have to install more, it's already installed. That's very different than we want to have another new subdivision on the south end of town, right? So those are important questions to have about, all right, we know where we want to grow, but what types of growth do we want to have in certain areas? There's nothing to say you couldn't have, we just want single-family homes on the Century site across the street. That is an option. It's probably not the biggest bang for your buck out there, but it certainly is an option. Those are things that we need to look at. Infill development is land that you already are providing services to or utilities to. It probably isn't the highest performing. And had it stay in the sun is ready for a new use versus, growing outward in certain areas.
So the big question in that is, can you control growth in the area? And I'm going to say, go to Thiensville. You know where Thiensville is? It's in the middle of Mequon.
It's surrounded by Mequon and Cedarburg.
Okay.
And you know what Mequon was?
Farms?
The township that surrounded Thiensville. And Thiensville refused to grow, and it didn't change a thing. You couldn't tell where Thiensville begins or ends in Mequon, but Mequon's this huge metropolitan area, and Thiensville's a little bitty city in the middle. And so what you were looking at is, look at the west side of the lake. That's not in the city of Lake Mills.
Yeah.
To the east side, that's not in the city of Lake Mills.
There are communities in California that control their community with land trusts and things like that, though, right? Agricultural land trusts and how people use that land.
California is a totally different statutory animal than Wisconsin. Now, the county could do it through agricultural conservation easements, but even those, when the property's right and ready to be developed, they buy those out and develop them. So when you look at Waukesha, look how many townships around Waukesha are fully developed. So you have to be prepared that the city has to understand how to control their growth, or not only within the boundaries, but outside the boundaries. Because otherwise, the city population could stop, but the total development in the area will not. And then you'll be like Monona. And think about how Monona, or go check out how Monona has to.
I see what you're saying. Being from Racine, I'm like Mount Pleasant and Sturtevant and all that.
Right. So,
And we have an interstate.
yes, and so there's going to be a lot of pressure. We're between Milwaukee and Madison. There's just going to be a ton of pressure. And so the developers are going to come because we got an interstate access, and it's going to, whether it's here or in the town of Lake Mills or the town of Milford or the town of Aslan, it's going to happen.
So, again, this was all we were really trying to cover, was to kind of reiterate the land use issues, is spend some time in the car, drive around, look at the objectives that are here, but in the plan itself, right, you have the existing adopted plan, specific recommendations or objectives under each of the land use categories. Those are the things that we're going to want to take a look at to see if they still hold true. How are we going to plan for, the growth that is projected here? Are we going to want to plan for that? Is that kind of growth we want? If you're saying we want to flatten that a little bit, that's an important conversation to have. It's hard to dissociate land use and housing, but thinking about housing products that are out there and housing products that are needed, and that the objectives of the land use categories are achieving some of the things that we we feel are important. And then next month, we'll hopefully have some more public feedback to bring back to you, so we can really kind of roll our shirt sleeves up and get our hands dirty with these things. Was there anything else related to this that you wanted to talk about?
Plan Commission, is there anything that you want to cover at this meeting? Or would you like to pick this up again the next time we meet?
Oh, I got a few comments. I've had a heck of a month. It's just been a series of lots of people talking to me about this comprehensive plan. And I got quite an education on the plan itself. Reflecting back to the old plan, a whole bunch of our thoughts and desires never happened. I mean, just take the north side, for instance. You know, we just talked about that. We had all kinds of plans about, you know, maybe even developing out there. Didn't happen. We have a small housing development to the south, and then something we didn't even think was going to happen is the Mangan thing with the rentals, you know, with the apartments. So during this education, I learned that by statute we need a comprehensive plan, but we don't need a monster that we can't ever achieve. So I'm having trouble. I'm just having trouble with the amount of meetings, the amount of focus we're having on things that it's almost like a Christmas list. If we can't achieve these goals, even though we have to have them by statute, I don't know. I just think we should pull back some. Here we got 6 public hearings and an administration that's going to change. And there's so many more pressing things that we should try to accomplish in those few months. And we have potentially a real big issue as far as the treatment plant. And I don't know, I just think we should put the brakes on this and maybe look to see after the administration change to revisit the comprehensive plan. We could adopt the old plan and change some demographics and not be anywhere out of compliance. I don't know, to have focus groups with people to make a wish list is one thing. Some of those facts and figures are very important as far as what types of businesses, what types of housing, but to end up trying to figure out where development's going to be, and then come back like we did tonight and make amendments to future land maps. I've worked with all of the staff, and to the point of even being lectured that we don't design build, we don't do public engineering, we don't do development. The city is not in the business of developing. We react to developers. So why would we just totally, no holds barred, say that we can't have a certain development with an interstate corridor? It's like what Steve said, you're going to have to manage this in some way, but to say that we want all housing there, what happens? Trucks run on truck routes. I've said this at other meetings. I just think this isn't where we should be focusing our main priorities right now. And I plan to bring some recommendations for future agendas, and one is the very plan that we worked 5 years on, and that's the zoning code. There is such a significant amount of issues with our zoning code right now, and we need to begin to address those. And while we still have Steve here, and to be able to ask questions of the people that are involved right now, rather than, I don't know, I don't see it. I just don't see what we're up to. I know this is budgeted. I have no idea what this budget is, but I'd rather focus the dollars on something that's more public-oriented. Our zoning code affects every single person, everybody in the audience. I paused on item 8, and when Mrs. Bishop said that she couldn't support that, it was based on a zoning code issue of a multi-story building. It's like, we need to go back to that zoning code and refocus on things that are important to the citizens. That's where we should have focus groups. We should talk to the people. We should fill this place. During the course of that, I stood out there, looked in that camera, and begged the people to come. Of course, we didn't get them, but I think we're going to get them this time because people are aware of what's going on. I don't know. I just don't, at this point, I just don't see why we need to have such a monster of a comprehensive plan. I see it as a wish list. It's one thing to be focused on things we want to avoid, and we've done that in the existing industrial park. However, we're not in the business of development, and developers are going to bring these things to this forum, and we're going to be able to act on those then. We did it tonight. I got notes here all over. You know, we're making amendments to existing land. I don't know. That's my comments for now.
Well, I would say that we do have, we're making good progress on a comprehensive plan. And, you know, there are zoning code issues, as you mentioned, but I prefer to see those issues before we can turn our full attention back to zoning code. I think it's wise for us to continue with a comprehensive plan because, you know, land use decision-making should come first before we then turn to a zoning code and of course, before we can get there. There will still be issues that come in front of us that show the issues of the zoning code, and we'll see them. But I think we proceeding with the comprehensive plan, and fortunately, you know, we have the existing plan that we can build on, and I think that is a very helpful process to do that. And also, you know, as we meet again on the comprehensive plan, we're going to have other ideas about what to think about. You know, as an example, one thing that I would have an interest in, and it's late at night now to explore, and I don't think anyone should explore this right now, but you know, just as an example, you know, we have a wastewater treatment plant issue, so we would have an interest in what a modified or a new wastewater treatment plant, what the capacity would be of that. What is the design capacity as an example, just as an example, because that would inform us. That would inform us as to you know, what growth and then what is the lifetime of a new or modified wastewater treatment plant, what is the anticipated lifetime. So then we would have, that's more information that I think would be helpful as an example. And then there's the other example of land use and infill development and redevelopment opportunities. At one time, Tax Income and Financing District Number 3 was created. Now, that didn't materialize, but there was some good ideas contained in that proposal. And those are some things, an example of something that we want to maybe look at again as time goes on. But those are just a couple of things. But a comprehensive planning process is, and the consulting planners have made excellent progress in a short amount of time. And I would be, I want to see that commence, and that'll inform us as to what we should be looking at for future zoning, and then we have a better perspective for where Lake Mills should continue from there. And I think the information coming forward is going to be extremely helpful. So,
I think, a little bit of history on where the comprehensive plan statute came from. It's important to go back and understand that in a lot of areas in the state that were high development, there was a lot of resistance to development, and the development community went to the state and got the comprehensive plan law basically pushed through to take control away from local municipalities and how they handled these types of issues. And that's why tonight, when you look at it, and we have to amend the future land use map before we can actually do the zoning, the development community wanted us to set out these areas that were available for development under certain types of conditions, and they wanted to be able to do that development without any question. And so the comprehensive plan basically lays out, this is the way the community expects to grow. When a developer comes in, he expects to know what to be able to do. And so if you are going to do a land use change, which is something we did tonight, you have to go through that process. That process was never in place prior to the comprehensive plan law. And the reason is because they want to make sure that developers were kind of being treated fairly, or didn't have to go through as extensive a public process as what they were going through back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So it's really a process that has developed at the state level, and was designed to create an easier development environment than had previously existed in some communities, particularly in southeast Wisconsin. So I believe that the intent there is that you have to kind of have the comprehensive plan in place to be able to do the zoning changes. And they kind of tie together really substantially. So yes, it would have been nice not to have to do it, just do the zoning, but it's kind of laid out for us in statutory requirement. Now, how you deal with that is separate from zoning, but it really should be dealt with comprehensive plan first and then zoning.
And I'm not against that, Steve. It's just a matter of we already have it and we're not built out. I don't know. I guess it's my opinion. I would just like to focus. I just like to focus the last time we have with you on other things. I just think we should put the brakes on this, and we have one. And just amend it enough, or just table it. Table it until the next administration comes in. I mean, I don't think we're out of compliance, are we? I mean, we're in compliance.
Yes, no, we're out of compliance.
It's not really enforced.
Yeah, it's not enforced, but it is a requirement to be done every 10 years. Now, some cities do it more often, some, but most cities try and hit the 10-year time period. We're actually a little beyond that.
We were intending to do it, and then we had this whole COVID thing, and it was a terrible time.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to get, I'm sorry, I don't have the mic then. We were going to do it earlier, but COVID hit, and then the U.S. Census wasn't going to provide any data because of COVID. So we were going to have to wait 2 years to get data anyway. And without having good data, you need it as a foundation. So there was an anticipation to do it a couple years ago. It just didn't, there was circumstances beyond our control.
If I could also add, there are quite a bit of funding and grant opportunities out there these days, and many times a condition of those applications are recent public involvement and future land use and planning and illustrating those plans with what the grant is for. So updating this plan in a timely fashion may benefit the community to seek those opportunities.
Mr. Wolf, Mr. Kranze, was there anything else you wanted to present to us this evening?
Just to say that next month, the intention would be to have a little more discussion on the utilities and community facilities component of this, because it is such an important
Yes.
part of land use decision-making. So
That would be great.
looking at Dwayne, he was going to be involved in that.
Yes. Well, that sounds wonderful. All right. All right, I think we're going to close item number 17, and we'll go on to 18, recommendations for future agendas. Does anyone have anything to say about?
Yeah, I'd like to put something on the agenda to begin some modifications to the zoning code. And we'll be bringing just a couple things in specificity. So specific items that we want to address. And we'll start with a couple at a time, but I think we really need to look at that.
All right. All right, is there anything else about future agendas?
No, I'd like to suspend the rules if possible, to see if there's an opportunity for public to, we have a handful of people out here that stayed for 2.5, 3 hours. They have anything to say?
Yes, you mentioned that. I want to make a motion to suspend the rules and invite people if want to say anything about the comprehensive plan process. You can.
Yeah, I'd like the motion to suspend rules.
All right.
Ryan Grady.
Mr. Grady has moved to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Ms. Bishop seconds.
And Mrs. Bishop has seconded to suspend the rules to allow people who are still here, if they wish to speak about the comprehensive plan.
Do we have to vote? Do we have to say aye?
What?
Do we have to say aye?
All in favor?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? I was getting there. All right, anyone who wishes, who does want to say anything about the comprehensive plan process, then we are open for that now, so please, we welcome your comments.
Mary Doyle, 325 East Washington Street. Just a quick question with the focus groups. I didn't notice that the Lake Mills Aztalan Historical Society was included in any of those groups, and I thought we had talked, or it was talked that they would be part of the focus groups.
We did mention that, yes.
They were?
Yeah, we did, yes, but thank you for bringing that up.
And I will say, there is an entire chapter devoted to cultural resources, and we would be speaking with them directly about historic resources in Lake Mills.
Okay,
So-
perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Patrick Doyle, 325 East Washington Street. Just a couple of reactions and comments. First, with the results that are turned in, does that include paper copies that people have filled out? Is that part of the number turned in?
If hard copies are submitted to the city staff then enters them, yes.
Okay, so when you list 600 some, those are part of that?
That's my understanding.
Okay. The other you're surprised at the number of people that work outside of Lake Mills and live here. Comments I get from a lot of people is that they feel really comfortable working out there and then coming back to their Lake Mills. And they treasure their Lake Mills, and that it is not what is always out there. And the idea that perhaps we don't have to be everything to everyone, and that we're going to hang on to our identity, put up restrictions, or however you want to say that hold our integrity, that maybe if everything wants to grow around us, we're going to we're going to push down on that brake pedal as hard as we can to maintain what we have here, because I think we have something incredibly special here. And once things are torn down, they're gone. And unfortunately, our history here, some things have been torn down along the way, and you're not going to see them back. And I think we have to really treasure that. On the ordinance side, as I talk to more and more businesses that are frustrated with those ordinances, large businesses, some of the largest in their area in the state, looking at moving out of this community and finding ways perhaps just in the next township so they get out of the city and the rules are different, because they're feeling very frustrated and smothered by some of those, some things in the zoning. So I agree, maybe that's something that does need to be looked at. I feel bad when I talk to people I know in the business community and they're saying, I'm just fed up. I'm really looking at moving someplace else. And other communities are offering. They're glad to get them. You know, just some of the things, our cafe license downtown, there are other communities, and we're looking at, and thank you for some of those changes, but there are also communities out there saying, we're going to waive all the fees because we just want to encourage you to do that type of thing in our community. And I think maybe we need to start looking down that road just a little bit. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Doyle. Is there anyone else who wants to say anything about the comprehensive planning process? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
It's been moved to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Grady, second by Mr. Holman to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Fine. We're adjourned.